Decades ago, Iran was on the verge of becoming a superpower. In 1977, Iran's economy was 65% higher than South Korea's, larger than Turkey, and a whopping 5 times the size of Vietnam's. And why not? It sat on the oil that runs the world and the geography every empire fought to possess. But one stubborn decision in the 1980s is the reason Iran has been brought to its knees today. In a split second, you'd blame the Islamic Revolution, but it was something else. It was chasing a blinding power to secure unquestionable dominance. Iran's hunger for dominance had nothing to do with America or Israel back then. It began with Middle Eastern geopolitics. The Middle East is heavily defined by the Sunni-Shia divide. Saudi, Egypt, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates are Sunni-majority powers, but Iran stands as the only major Shia-dominated power in the region. This divide has fueled decades of mistrust, rivalry, and conflict. But at the heart of this power equation was something that decides the rise and fall of empires. About 30% of the world's oil production and a major share of global natural gas reserves are located in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia and Iran both possess some of the world's largest oil reserves, but geography held the real power. Key global trade choke points, the Strait of Hormuz, the Suez Canal, and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, sit in this region. Control and influence over these routes means economic and political power. These factors locked Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Iran into a power struggle for dominance since the 20th century. But one event was about to change the power structure forever. After the Arab Spring, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar strengthened their alliances with the Western world, especially the United States. Iran, meanwhile, became more isolated. Its neighbors made the situation worse. Iran fought a devastating war with Iraq in the 1980s. On the other hand, Afghanistan's instability became a constant security concern. But a bigger challenge was that it shared a tense border with Pakistan, a nuclear-armed neighbor with which it had frequent conflicts. Decades later, the same Pakistan would play a critical role in making Iran extremely dangerous. But at the moment, all these factors pushed Iran towards one conclusion: nuclear power was essential for survival. So, a strange country helped Iran develop nuclear technology. Not China or Russia, but surprisingly, the country was the USA. And you'll soon realize why that completely made sense. Iran's nuclear journey began even before any of the major adversities we mentioned even existed. Under Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, Iran launched a series of ambitious nuclear projects, with major assistance from the US and Europe. According to Akbar Ahmad, Iran was already conducting nuclear research and education at the University of Tehran in the late 1960s. This work centered around a 5-megawatt research reactor supplied by the United States, which became operational in 1967. Just a few years later, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty came into force. Iran became one of the original 62 signatories. By the mid-1970s, Iran's nuclear ambitions had exploded. In 1974, the Shah announced a bold goal: generate roughly 23,000 megawatts of electricity from nuclear power within 20 years. To achieve this, Iran signed major contracts with Western nuclear suppliers. It partnered with Kraftwerk Union to build 2 1,200-megawatt reactors in Bushehr. The cherry on the top, at the same time, negotiations were underway with a French company for 2 additional reactors. It made sense for the US to help Iran in nuclear technology, because, as part of its Cold War policy, this was intended to bind Tehran to the West, and this was meant for peaceful purposes. Iran invested heavily in the nuclear fuel cycle. In 1974, it reportedly invested $1 billion into Eurodif. Ahmad also notes that Iran was pursuing indigenous capabilities, including plans for a new nuclear research center in Isfahan, along with uranium mining and ore processing efforts. But one fine day, years of progress were flushed down the toilet.
The revolution had been made reality, and in Khomeini, the figurehead around whom the opposition had coalesced, there was a ready-made leader.
The 1979 Iranian Revolution brought nearly all nuclear activities to a halt. To make it worse, the Iran-Iraq War erupted soon in 1980, draining resources and severely damaging Iran's nuclear infrastructure. For instance, the 2 nuclear reactors under construction at Bushehr were bombed multiple times, and eventually the project stopped. You might ask how the US and Israel became Iran's biggest enemies. By the 1990s, no Middle Eastern country beside Israel had nuclear power reactors. Although Israel never publicly acknowledged this, through intelligence reports and whistleblowers, Iran was well aware of Israel's nuclear capabilities. Israel, as well as the United States, made Iran feel strategically vulnerable. Iranian leaders believed that under Washington's order, Israel could strike Iran, and that would undermine Iran's influence and its anti-Western agenda. This fear was intensified by Iran's support for groups like Hamas and Hezbollah, which directly confronted Israel and the US-led regional order. But unlike before, Iran could no longer turn to the United States for assistance. After the 1979 Islamic Revolution, the new Khomeini regime was openly anti-West and deeply distrustful of the US. And they had a reason for this hate. Iranian leaders remember history well, particularly the 1953 CIA-led coup that toppled Iran's elected prime minister. This fear of foreign interference shaped their strategy moving forward. So Iran turned to alternative allies, Russia, China, and Pakistan. In 1985, and again in 1990, Iran signed nuclear cooperation agreements with China. Later in 1995, Iran reached a major deal with Russia to complete the long-stalled Bushehr nuclear reactor, and potentially gain access to a uranium enrichment plant. Under US pressure, some of the most sensitive components were never delivered, especially the heart of nuclear weapon technology, equipment linked to enrichment. In fact, when Russia agreed to help Iran with its Bushehr project, it was focused on civilian uses and not related to enrichment technology. Temporarily, that gave Iran a justification to acquire advanced nuclear equipment that otherwise might not have been sold due to its potential military applications. Everyone thought that Iran's dreams of nuclear weapons was finished, but one madman from Pakistan had other plans. In the 1990s, Iran is believed to have obtained uranium enrichment technology through the Black Market network run by Pakistani nuclear scientist A.Q. Khan. Khan is known as the father of the Pakistani nuclear bomb. But the reason I said he's a madman is because he was selling nuclear technology like it's peanuts. Khan directly sold nuclear technology, centrifuge designs, and materials to Iran, North Korea, and Libya through his illegal nuclear smuggling network. This technology gave Iran the wings to fly. By the late 1990s, senior Iranian officials approved a secret initiative known as the Ahmad Plan. This was a project aimed at building an arsenal of 5 nuclear weapons by 2004. Surprisingly, Iran almost succeeded. This plan was led by Mohsen Fakhrizadeh and advanced rapidly over just a few years. Under the Ahmad Plan, Iran acquired foreign nuclear weapon designs and modified them to develop its own. It conducted conventional explosives testing, performed casting and machining experiments using surrogate materials, and studied how a nuclear warhead could be integrated with the Shahab-3 ballistic missile. But Iran still lacked the most critical component of a nuclear weapon: weapons-grade nuclear material, either highly enriched uranium or plutonium. To solve that problem, Iran secretly developed 2 key nuclear facilities: a uranium enrichment plant at Natanz and a heavy water production facility at Arak. For years, no one outside of Iran knew these facilities even existed, but their own people betrayed them. In 2002, the National Council of Resistance of Iran publicly exposed both sides. It's an Iranian opposition coalition, and they did this because they wanted revenge against the Islamic Republic. After being exposed, Iran claimed the facilities were meant for civilian purposes, but their design and their capabilities told a different story. Natanz could be used to produce weapons-grade uranium, and Arak could enable the production of plutonium, both essential for nuclear weapons. Even more damaging was the fact that Iran had concealed these sites from the International Atomic Energy Agency. Once the truth came out, international suspicion exploded. The exposure of Natanz and Arak triggered an intense global effort to stop Iran's enrichment program. In October of 2003, Iran reached an agreement with Britain, France, and Germany, committing to suspend enrichment and to sign an additional protocol allowing intrusive IAEA inspections. But trust never fully returned. Around the same time, the US invasion of Iraq in 2003, launched over suspected weapons of mass destruction, sent a powerful message to Tehran. Later that year, Iran formally halted the Ahmad Plan, its structured nuclear weapons program. But the crisis was far from over. In 2006, the P5+1 presented Iran with a diplomatic offer: economic and political incentives in exchange for suspending enrichment. Almost simultaneously, the US Security Council passed Resolution 1696, its first legally binding demand that Iran halt enrichment activities. But instead of ending its nuclear weapons program, Iran reorganized it into 2 parallel tracks. The overt track included facilities with plausible civilian purposes, such as Natanz and Arak. The covert track was smaller, quieter, and far more sensitive. Its goal was to preserve the expertise gained under the Ahmad Plan and continue critical weapons-related research. According to the IAEA, activities like computer modeling of nuclear implosion, compression dynamics, and explosive yield continued until at least 2009. That same year, Barack Obama, Nicolas Sarkozy, and Gordon Brown jointly revealed another secret site, a covert uranium enrichment facility near the city of Qom. The world would later know it as the Fordow Fuel Enrichment Plant. Israeli intelligence estimates suggest that nearly 70% of the scientists who once worked on the Ahmad Plan were absorbed into a new organization, SPND, Iran's Organization of Defensive Innovation and Research. By 2010, Iran crossed an insane threshold. It began enriching uranium to 20% purity. This was crazy because uranium enriched above 20% is classified as highly enriched uranium. And once enrichment reaches that level, the path to weapons-grade uranium, that is above 90%, becomes dramatically easier. Iran's enrichment efforts relied mainly on gas centrifuge technology. To understand why this alarmed the world, consider this. Natural uranium contains only 0.7% of the fissile isotope U-235. Basically, natural uranium can't fuel a nuclear reactor. Only about 0.7% of it can, which is much less. And this is where the enrichment comes into the picture. Civilian nuclear reactors require enrichment to just 3 to 5%, but reaching 20% is the real threshold. Converting uranium from natural levels to 20% requires far more effort than enriching from 20% to weapons grade. This is the core reason why Iran's program triggered such intense global concern. While this level was still below weapons grade, it dramatically reduced the time Iran would need to reach it. This was also the same period when the United States was deeply focused on the global war on terror, desperately hunting al-Qaeda leaders, especially Osama bin Laden. Any sign of instability or covert cooperation in the region was taken extremely seriously. During this time, several intelligence reports also surfaced claiming links between Iran's Ministry of Intelligence and Security and militant networks. Whether proven or not, these allegations made Iran's nuclear ambitions appear even more dangerous in the eyes of the world, especially America and Israel. For Israel, it became an existential threat, because Iranian leaders had the dreams of annihilating Israel with nukes. So Israel performed black magic on the centrifuges. The centrifuges suddenly sped up far beyond safe limits. Rotors began to wobble, scrape, and bend inside their casings, and many centrifuges suddenly cracked or shattered. Shockingly, the control room screens showed everything was normal. The scenes seemed like a ghost haunted the place or something performed black magic. The world named this ghost Stuxnet. Stuxnet was a highly sophisticated computer worm designed specifically to target Iran's nuclear facilities. Unlike traditional cyber attacks, Stuxnet went after industrial control systems, the programmable logic controllers, or PLCs, that controlled Iran's uranium centrifuges. It was discovered publicly in 2010 and was the first known cyber weapon capable of causing physical destruction, quietly sabotaging machinery while feeding false data to operators. Investigations later revealed that Stuxnet was almost certainly developed by a joint effort, including the US National Security Agency, the CIA, and Israeli intelligence. Stuxnet slowed down Iran's nuclear program like nothing else did. Instead of bombs or missiles, this was a digital strike, one that proved that cyber warfare had become a new battlefield. But I said slowed down, not ended. Despite mounting pressure, Iran's enrichment program kept moving forward. By the summer of 2013, Iran had installed more than 18,000 first-generation IR-1 centrifuges, along with around 1,300 advanced machines, mostly the IR-2M type. At the same time, Iran had stockpiled nearly 9,700 kilograms of uranium enriched up to 5%, and about 370 kilograms enriched to 20%. Yet, even amid this escalation, diplomacy did not completely collapse. Behind the scenes, talks between Iran and the United States continued, leading to a breakthrough known as the Joint Plan of Action, or JPOA. The JPOA was designed as a temporary confidence-building agreement. It covered the period from January to July of 2014. With the option to extend the 6-month timeline by mutual consent. Under the deal, Iran agreed to halt production of uranium enriched to 20%, dilute its existing 20% stockpile, and allow expanded monitoring for access to the International Atomic Energy Agency and its nuclear facilities. In return, the P5+1 offered limited but meaningful sanctions relief. They pledged not to impose new nuclear-related sanctions while the agreement was in force and unfroze approximately $4.2 billion in Iranian assets held overseas. Most importantly, the JPOA created a framework for negotiating a permanent solution. That long-term deal arrived nearly 2 years later. On July 14, 2015, Iran and the J5+1 announced the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, better known as the JCPOA. Under the JCPOA, Iran accepted strict and time-bound limits on its nuclear program, operating no more than 5,060 IR-1 centrifuges for 10 years, limiting uranium enrichment to 3.67% for 15 years and capping its enriched uranium stockpile at 300 kilograms for the same period. In exchange, Iran received sweeping sanctions relief, and the world believed the nuclear crisis had finally been contained. This resolution suspended previous UN sanctions while maintaining an arms embargo on Iran for 5 years and restrictions on its ballistic missiles program for 8 years. But not everyone welcomed the JCPOA. The Gulf countries, especially Saudi Arabia and the UAE, along with Israel, were deeply unhappy with this deal. From Saudi Arabia's perspective, a nuclear agreement with Tehran created 2 major problems. First, lifting sanctions would strengthen Iran's economy, giving Tehran more resources to expand its influence across the region through allies and proxy groups. Second, the deal was temporary. Most of its key restrictions would expire after about 15 years, and the agreement did not dismantle Iran's technical knowledge or nuclear infrastructure. That meant Iran could legally expand its nuclear program in the future, potentially moving closer to a weapon when the limits expired. In Saudi's eyes, the JCPOA didn't eliminate the threat, it delayed it, while allowing Iran to grow stronger in the meantime. Israel's objection was even more direct. Israeli leaders argued that the deal did not actually stop Iran from developing nuclear weapons. Instead, it left Iran with the expertise, facilities, and personnel needed to restart or accelerate its program later. For Israel, a country that views a nuclear-armed Iran as an existential threat, the JCPOA was not seen as a solution, but as a dangerous gamble. And these objections finally played their role. On March 29, 2016, the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and Germany accused Iran of conducting ballistic missile tests that were inherently capable of delivering nuclear weapons. Actions, they said, violated the spirit of the UN restrictions tied to the nuclear deal. Around the same time, US officials warned that if Iran enriched its uranium further, it could produce enough weapons-grade material for a nuclear bomb in just 2 to 3 months. The JCPOA quickly became one of the biggest political issues in the 2016 US presidential election. Critics argued that the deal was too weak, too temporary, and too trusting. When Donald Trump came into power, that criticism turned into policy. On April 30th, 2018, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made a dramatic public announcement. Standing before the world, he claimed Israel had uncovered proof of Iran's secret nuclear weapons program. According to Netanyahu, after signing the nuclear deal in 2015, Iran intensified efforts to conceal its nuclear past. In 2017, Iran allegedly moved its most sensitive nuclear weapons files to a highly secure warehouse in southern Tehran. This location housed what Netanyahu called Iran's atomic archive, a site so secret that only a handful of Iranians knew it existed, and a few Israelis too. Netanyahu revealed that Israel's intelligence agency Mossad carried out a covert operation inside Tehran. With the help of agents on the ground, they successfully removed half a ton of classified materials from the warehouse. The haul was massive, 55,000 pages of documents, along with 55,000 digital files stored on 183 CDs. Israel claimed these documents proved that Iran had lied about the military dimensions of its nuclear program, and had never abandoned its ambition to build a nuclear weapon. Just 8 days later, on May 8, 2018, President Donald Trump announced that the United States was officially withdrawing from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. He argued that Iran had failed to fully disclose its past nuclear weapons work, and he strongly criticized the deal for ignoring Iran's ballistic missile program and its support for militant groups across the Middle East. Following the US withdrawal from the nuclear deal, Washington launched a campaign of maximum pressure. The United States reimposed sweeping sanctions and aggressively targeted Iran's oil exports, the backbone of its economy. As a result, Iran's oil exports collapsed by more than 60% after 2018, costing the country tens of billions of dollars in revenue every year. The scale of these sanctions was unprecedented. The Trump administration designated over 970 Iranian individuals and entities across more than 26 rounds of sanctions, more than any US administration in history. Entire financial networks were dismantled. A vast web of front companies operating in Iran, the UAE, and Turkey was sanctioned for secretly transferring over $1 billion and euros to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. More than 70 Iran-linked financial institutions, along with their domestic and foreign subsidiaries, were targeted. The global banking system shut its doors. SWIFT disconnected every sanctioned Iranian bank, including even the Central Bank of Iran. The economic impact was devastating. Iran's economy shrunk by around 6% in 2018, and nearly 7% in 2019. On a per capita basis, Iran's GDP collapsed dramatically, falling from about $8,000 in 2012 to nearly $5,000 by 2024, according to World Bank data. And the pressure didn't stop at Iran's borders. The United States went after foreign companies doing business with Tehran, even major Chinese firms. One of the most striking cases was ZTE, one of China's largest telecom companies. ZTE was caught multiple times illegally trading with Iran, including selling US-origin technology and NVIDIA chips allegedly used for defense purposes. In response, Washington banned US exports to ZTE, nearly crippling the company. The ban was so severe that the Chinese government intervened directly, asking the US for relief. ZTE ultimately paid massive fines and accepted strict compliance conditions to survive. The US did all of this to pressure Iran into accepting a stronger deal and abandoning its nuclear ambitions. But instead, tensions continued to rise and soon spilled into open confrontation. On May 12, 2019, 4 commercial ships were damaged off the coast of Fujairah, near the Gulf of Oman. The vessels included 2 Saudi oil tankers, a Norwegian-flagged tanker, and an Emirati bunkering ship. Soon after, more tankers were attacked in the Gulf of Oman. The United States blamed Iran, or Iranian-backed proxies, and responded by deploying additional naval forces to the region. The Middle East was once again on the brink. By January of 2020, Tehran announced it had abandoned all remaining limits on its uranium enrichment programs. But this claim was misleading. Iran's nuclear activities didn't just resume, they accelerated sharply after a major turning point later that year. On January 3rd, 2020, the US military carried out a drone strike near Baghdad International Airport, killing Qasem Soleimani. He was the commander of the Quds Force, the elite foreign operations unit of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Soleimani was one of the most powerful figures in Iran, and his assassination shocked the region. It pushed the US-Iran relations to their most dangerous levels in decades. And the escalation didn't stop there. Later that same year, on November 27, 2020, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh was assassinated. He wasn't a normal human. He was known as the architect of Iran's nuclear weapons program. For Iran's leadership, this was a watershed moment. The message was unmistakable. Iran's most powerful military commanders and its most secretive nuclear scientists were no longer untouchable. In 2021, the P5+1 countries attempted to revive a nuclear deal with Iran and the United States, but negotiations stalled again, because Iran demanded stronger guarantees that the United States would not withdraw again from the agreement, something Washington said it could not legally promise. At the same time, Iran insisted on the closure of an International Atomic Energy Agency investigation into traces of man-made uranium found at several undeclared sites inside of Iran, a demand Western powers refused to accept. But after the Russia-Ukraine war, the situation changed even further. Isolated by Western sanctions, Russia and Iran moved closer than ever. Moscow needed drones, weapons, and regional partners, and Tehran needed diplomatic cover, technology, and leverage against the West. With Russia now firmly in Iran's corner, the chances of the nuclear issue returning to the old status quo pretty much vanished, and Iran's nuclear program did not slow down. It accelerated. Now, Iran's rapidly advancing uranium enrichment has become the single biggest obstacle for diplomats trying to revive the nuclear deal. Because of the increasing nuclear activities in Iran, by April of 2025, the United States re-engaged Iran in indirect talks, with Oman acting as a mediator. But the situation continued to worsen. In a confidential IAEA report dated May 31st, 2025, the agency confirmed that Iran now possessed over 400 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60% purity, an increase of nearly 50% or 133.8 kilograms since its February report. This made Iran the only non-nuclear state in the world to reach such enrichment levels. The IAEA again warned that uranium enriched to 60% serves no credible civilian purpose and sits dangerously close to weapons-grade material. Media reports also revealed that Iran had conducted secret nuclear activities using undeclared material at 3 locations long under investigation by the agency. However, the Iranian Foreign Ministry accused the IAEA of relying on forged documents provided by Israel. Israel wasn't in the mood to take any chances, but this time it lit up the skies. In June of 2025, Israel launched strikes on Iran's Natanz nuclear facility. It targeted underground structures, including a multi-story enrichment hall, centrifuge arrays, electrical systems, and critical supporting infrastructure. Around the same time, Iran's Tasnim news agency reported the deaths of 2 individuals. It described them as major nuclear scientists, Mohammad Mehdi Tehranchi and Feridun Abbasi. Abbasi was no ordinary figure. He was the former head of the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran, a former member of parliament, and held a PhD in nuclear physics. He had conducted nuclear research with Iran's defense ministry. Abbasi had survived an earlier assassination attempt in 2010, when twin bomb blasts in Tehran killed fellow nuclear scientist Majid Shahriyari. After this incident, Iran remained under constant international scrutiny. By December 2025, as tensions surged following Iran's violent crackdown on nationwide protests, new satellite images revealed suspicious activity at 2 Iranian nuclear sites that had been bombed the previous year by Israel and the United States. The images, captured by Planet Labs PBC, showed that new roofs had been constructed over 2 damaged buildings at the Isfahan and Natanz nuclear facilities. The situation has now reached a critical point. If Iran does not fully abandon its nuclear program, the United States may ultimately resort to military action. In recent weeks, the U.S. has reinforced its military presence in the region, deploying additional Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, or THAAD, systems, and Patriot missile batteries, including new deployments at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. U.S. President Donald Trump has repeatedly threatened military action, warning that if Iran does not sign a deal, the next attack will be far worse than last June's strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. From Washington's perspective, Asia already has 5 nuclear-armed states: Russia, China, India, Pakistan, and North Korea. Adding Iran to it could be a blunder. It is a country ruled by a radical Islamic regime that has spewed venom against Israel and America time and time again. U.S. and allied officials fear that over time, nuclear materials, technology, or expertise could leak to terrorist organizations, either directly or indirectly. Such a development would not only threaten the Middle East, but could endanger global security as a whole.